Hi everyone, my name is Tim Holtzman. I'm an associate professional clinical counselor out of Berkeley, California. I'm here today with Romona Mukhergee, and Romona works out of San Francisco, and she also works with telehealth out of New York. Thanks for joining me today, Romona.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, look forward to the conversation ahead.
Yes.
All right, would you like to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Romona, and my practice is called Therapy to Evolve, mental health counseling. What I do at Therapy to Evolve is incorporate mindfulness, meditation, breath practice, hypnosis, body awareness, several different modalities that are a blend of Eastern philosophy, sort of Eastern wisdom practice, blending it with Western traditional talk therapy to create what is ideally a kind of cauldron of transformation, let's call it. So I was very clear when I started the practice in 2011 that I called it Therapy to Evolve. It was very purposeful that I didn't want it to be Romona Mukhergee psychotherapy, because it's not about me as a therapist that is healing you. It's about this space that we create together, that I create with my clients and my clients create with me, and we work together. To start, we work together to address certain symptoms. Everyone's always coming in because there's depression or anxiety or trauma, something that has triggered a distress or duress in the body and mind. And so we're going to work on that symptom, of course. We're going to address those issues. But ideally, the goal and my mission and vision is that we don't just stop at healing or just healing a symptom. We actually can allow whatever that precipitating event was that brought them into therapy, that thing that, that had these symptoms that we need to heal. We want that to actually then become a catalyst for greater self-awareness, greater embodiment of a peaceful and compassionate, contented state of being, which I would call a more evolved state of being. So it's therapy to evolve oneself.
Right on, I like it a lot. So essentially, it's not just about sort of fixing what's wrong, but it's really about growing and becoming a wholer, more fuller being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that,
yeah, and even this notion of like something being wrong, that there's a right way, that like there is something wrong with me and I need to get myself right. So I like to just move away even from that kind of thinking, because it's like there's something here that is maybe out of alignment, right?
Yeah.
Someone's coming in because they're having panic attacks, or someone is in this in the throes of grief because they've just lost a loved one, or they've maybe just lost their job, their livelihood, and they don't know how they're going to move forward, or whatever the situation is that is creating overwhelm and making the person feel like they can't function. It's not wrong. It's not something wrong with them. They're not. There's not something wrong to fix. There's this incredible situation that is causing what we were talking about earlier. It's causing a contraction and maybe like a misalignment with, feeling fully embodied and peaceful and steady and resilient. And so we're not looking to fix, just as you said. I'm repeating what you're saying now. Yeah, not at all about fixing right or wrong. And we don't even play around with that, in that field in our work together. Because what we're looking at is getting rid of the idea that something's wrong and actually looking for the wisdom in this particular painful circumstance and how it can catalyze or motivate a kind of growth. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm really curious to talk to you about how it is that you see mindfulness or somatic-based awareness as sort of key to the work, and how that might sort of be a little different from traditional forms of psychotherapy.
Yeah, so, and, when, it's an interesting question, because nowadays, like, the field has evolved so much, especially, I think, in the last several years, it's like, what is traditional therapy again? But,
yeah, totally.
like, nowadays, I think it is such a big part of how it's such a big direction that the field is moving to incorporate these alternative modalities. But so just to clarify, right, traditional therapy, we're talking about like talk therapy.
Yeah, I think of it more as, a lot of talking on the client's behalf and very focused on sort of thought and emotion mainly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so when we're dealing with thoughts and we're just talking, basically we're using one part of the brain that is great, that is wonderfully resourceful, and I think in its origins, like traditional psychotherapy, in its origin, it came at a time where there was no room to talk about any of this stuff. It's like stiff upper lip, just deal with it and move on. And so, at that time, it's like revolutionary to actually bring some language, give voice to the pain. So that was wonderful to a certain extent. But what is actually pretty old, ancient knowledge, in fact, what like the sages of Eastern cultures, of indigenous cultures, the shamans, what they all have known. They've known it all along, but what we now have is the science to back it up.
Yeah.
Because we've got some knowledge about the brain and the neuroplasticity, the big word in the field, is that when we're talking and thinking, we're just using one particular aspect of the brain, which is really rich. It's awesome. It's great. We love it. But what we know is that the brain is actually capable of so much more. It's this incredible resource. It's the source. It's the source for so much that goes on. While we're thinking and talking at the same time, our brain is breathing, it's feeling, it's sensing, it's pulsing, it's flowing, it's moving, so it's doing all of these things. And in a therapeutic setting, which is a setting that is about healing and about empowerment and resilience, in a setting like that, if we're only talking and exploring our thoughts, then really we're just using one aspect of the brain when we've got this incredible, like, abundant resource, right? So, like, I kind of think of it as like if we're just talking, like in traditional talk therapy, just talking about thoughts and emotions, it's like all you're ever doing is exercise. You're just working your biceps without working your triceps, without working your core, your psoas, your legs. Like, we've got all these other muscles that can help us be like hugely resourceful. And if we don't use those other muscles, they kind of dry out and atrophy, right? So it's like, great, my biceps look good, but and I can lift things as long as I'm lifting them this way. But everything else is not at my disposal, which is a shame. We miss out on so all of that to say, when we're incorporating mindfulness, when we're incorporating somatic awareness, we're exercising these other parts of the brain to get acquainted with, like, what does my movement tell me? What are these sensations telling me? What does the constrictedness of my breath tell me? There's so much information. And then if constrictedness in my breath is telling me that there's anxiety here, what I also know is that if I bring some fullness, some expansion to the breath, then maybe I can also bring some expansion to this anxious state. So the question was, how do we know, or why is it that somatic experiencing or mindfulness-based techniques can be more effective, or on top, additionally effective with traditional? And that's hopefully this is coming across clearly that it's because talk therapy is great and it does a certain something that we don't want to dismiss, but we just want to use every resource that we have available to us. Because the more acquainted we can get with the ways, these anxieties or depression or trauma or grief, kind of painful states of being and mind, how they're operating our system, if we're mindful about it, if we're present to how it's impacting our body, our movement, our breath, then we're that much more empowered in how we're dealing with it.
Yeah, I really like that analogy a lot, the sort of body analogy. And one thing too I'll add to that is, like, it's interesting because with different types of issues that people are dealing with, often they might be sort of related to one particular part of the brain. Like, for instance, with trauma, we know that it kind of gets stuck in different types of memory that's in different areas of the brain. So it's kind of like your body analogy. It's like if your arm is hurt, you know, you want to kind of like the analogy would be is like you need to kind of heal through that part. You know, if you're trying to exercise your shoulder when it's your arm that's kind of needing rehabilitation, you know, you might not be as effective. So with therapy, using the whole brain can really be helpful for getting at some of that stuff lingering into areas.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I would add too is like when you're using these types of work in the room, is there anything specific that you do? Like, is there any examples you can give us, like as far as like some of the things you actually do with clients to help them sort of gain more mindfulness or use somatic awareness in the room?
Yeah, sure. Well, so very common. So, you know, some of the common things that bring people into the room. And I really think, you know, people come in, okay, I lost my job. I'm very stressed out. I am struggling with my partner. We're very stressed out.
Yeah.
He's struggling with identity. Like I'm in between jobs, or I'm just out of college and trying to figure out what my job is going to be, or whatever it is. And suddenly I feel like everything I've done until now doesn't feel right. I don't know what to do next, you know. So in these moments of overwhelm, we just feel so lost. So one big thing is just we want to ground, you know, something very simple that is like a somatic experiencing and mindfulness practice is just grounding. I mean, where are your feet, you know? So starting with even feeling your feet flat on the floor and getting really acquainted with that. You know, when I put my feet flat on the floor, how does it impact my knees? How does it impact my spine? I mean, I automatically, just putting both feet flat on the floor, felt my spine get a little bit taller.
Nice.
Right? And then if my spine is a little taller, my breath is actually a little freer. And so sometimes something so simple as that, like, do you notice that when you go from sitting like, and you're like this, like, ugh, I'm so upset about the world. Like, okay, this contracted state, into when you open it up and you can breathe a little better, there's suddenly there's a shift.
Absolutely.
And to bring that mindful awareness to someone who has never done, or who has maybe had limited experience with this, it's like, wow, small little adjustments, if we're really present to it, have significant impact.
Yeah.
So that might be one.
Yep.
Another one, would you like to do a small meditation?
Yeah, sure, that'd be fun.
We can do it. We can.
Okay.
So another one that I do, I like to incorporate a lot of mudras, because also there's something about, I mean, there's a lot to this, but we'll just say, sometimes just the configuration of our hands, you know, we're so accustomed to our hands doing only a few things, which is this, you know, this, like this. And I mean, I guess in New York, I did not do much of this driving, but I guess out in the Bay Area or in California, there's more driving. But yeah, you know, our hands are only working in certain ways, in a very habitual way these days. So to open it up into certain gestures, and you can try one. So you're going to fold your thumbs in little, and then fold your index finger and middle finger over the thumb. So index finger and middle finger over the thumb. Yeah, so already it's kind of funky, right? Now you're going to face them together, let the ring finger and the pinky finger touch. Yeah, and you can let them kind of lean into each other. It sort of stretches the ring finger and pinky finger out, and then you can relax your elbows, relax your shoulders, and just hold it. This is a gesture for tranquility. So what it looks like this, so you guys can see it. But then you're going to relax your shoulders, relax your elbows, and just let it hang kind of right in front of the heart, solar plexus. Yeah. And there's a gentle way that the fingers are pressing into each other. There's not a lot of force. You're not jamming the fingers in. They're just leaning into each other. And there's this quality of the right side of the body and the left side of the body sort of joining. This also is right hemisphere and left hemisphere of the brain communicating. And naturally, and you noticed, Tim, like your breath has already gotten longer and deeper. So something about just coming into the posture brings us into a deeper breath awareness. You can let your eyes close. And let your breath get a little bit longer. Feel it as you breathe in. Feel the breath pass through the throat, the heart, into the belly, down to your root. As you breathe out, let the breath out be twice as long. And do that for 2 more rounds. Breathing in long and deep. Breathing out for twice as long. If the mind begins to wander, it's normal. It's very typical. So there's no judgment, there's no wrong, there's no I can't do this, I'm not good at this. We just drop all of that and just bring our awareness back to the gentle press of the fingertips, back to the soothing length of the breath. Back to the curiosity, the curious witnessing of what it's like to have our fingers in this funny shape. Take 1 more breath in just like that. Trusting that this is a gesture of deep tranquility, of deep communion between the right and left sides of our bodies, the right and left hemispheres, which is ultimately about communing a little bit more deeply with ourselves. On your next breath in, you can slowly release the gesture into your lap, stretch out your fingers if you need. And then as you breathe it out, let your eyes float open. And just take in the light, take in the room. It's the same as it was before, but maybe, just maybe, your perception of it or your awareness of the room is slightly shifted. Just observe. And what do you observe?
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely the reminder and the invitation to slow down and become more aware is, it's potent. Yeah, for sure. Now the challenge is how long will I be able to hold it for?
Yeah, which is a very common question. How long will I be able to hold it for? And you don't have to hold it for long. All you have to know is that you can just do the practice again.
Yeah, keep going back. Keep remembering to go back.
Just keep going back. Keep going back. In 30 seconds, you weave it through whatever experience you're in, and you're not holding on to it. It is just staying with you longer. There's not something we're striving for. We're just opening, and then it stays. That presence.
And what an important state to be in when you're doing therapy. It's understandable if someone is stressed and they just need to get some stuff out, but to be able to do therapy in a more mindful state such as this, I feel like there's a lot more, a wider range of different data to pull out. Like I can notice there might be a sensation in my body, or when an emotion might float up otherwise unknown to myself, but now I could actually catch it, or maybe an image or memory. It's like, oh, what's there? I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It makes it a lot more of a rich and sort of succulent experience. Like we were talking a little earlier, talk therapy is fun, but it just gets, for both the client and, for the process can just get a little bit less interesting, basically, if we don't incorporate some of this other stuff. So, I've had a number of people say, I'm bored of listening to myself say the same thing over again. And I'm like, I am too.
Yeah.
Let's do something different. So yeah.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I think we still have some time. Maybe I can ask you another question or two.
Yeah.
You kind of described some different techniques. I wonder, I'll ask you two questions. You could kind of go at whatever one you want.
Sure.
Is first of all, like, I wonder how you integrate this into your personal life and how that sort of supports you in your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, I wonder if there's any other sort of theoretical frameworks that empower your work or that guide your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Where do I want to start? So in terms of, I guess personal will kind of answer the next piece. So personally, I have had a long time practice of just yoga, like asana, so that your very typical yoga practice that we all see in all the fabulous studios all over town. So from a pretty young age, I think body awareness was a big thing for me because I have a dance background, yoga background, and both my dance and my yoga practice lent themselves to yogic philosophy because the specific dance tradition that I come from is an Indian. It's a temple dancing tradition. So these Eastern philosophies and wisdom practices of using breath, using pranayam, which is breath, using mudras, which comes from the dance, sitting in certain, with body awareness, postural awareness and alignment, which is yoga. All of those things started for me from a pretty young age. So they've been part of my practice anyway. And that's really important because, well, for me, it wasn't like, this is a cool blend, I should bring the East over to the West or whatever. It was just that I was doing it before I even realized it, because these things were it's part of where I come from, it is part of my culture, but it is also just was part of what I was doing anyway. So as what that looks like for me now is that I have my daily practice of getting on my yoga mat, I have my daily meditation practice, and then there is the constant weaving in, whether it's cooking, whether it's brushing my teeth, whether it's making my bed in the morning, of really practicing being present, like finding out when, as I pull the sheets over my bed, am I thinking about what I have to run to do, or can I actually pay attention to my bed for a moment and take that time. What I notice is I almost feel like there's this quality of being able to bend time, in a way, because if I'm not so rushed and harried and jammed, and operating with a kind of presence, like, I feel like I'm more on time to things these days than I ever was in my younger years, when I would be like, okay, I'd be running, I'd be speeding down the highway, and I'd still be 10 minutes late, and now it's like, I don't even know why, but somehow, just because I took the time to pay attention to how I made my bed in the morning, because I'm just, I guess, calm. There's that state of presence,
Yes, I like
so that. I get where I need to go, on time. I'm ready and available for it. So my own spiritual practices, daily meditation, daily yoga, a lot of journal writing, and then reading and seeking out teachers, having conversations with other people who are also doing this work, so that there's this, very, let's say, vibrant way of just staying in it.
Learning from different people, growing, exchanging ideas is powerful.
Yeah. And then in terms of theoretical framework, I started off, in my graduate training, of course, like psychodynamic, and, we learn about all of these different theories. And I think because I've been doing this for so long now, I almost struggle to give one particular framework, because I'm just informed deeply, I should say most deeply, by the wisdom practices of Eastern and indigenous philosophies. So what that means is understanding the cyclical nature of things, seeing ourselves as much bigger and much much more than the limits of this physical body. You know, that any sort of problem that arises, and it might take the shape of anxiety, trauma, depression, grief, relationship conflict, those are these like little mini contractions in life, mini or major contractions that happen because, you know, we contract in order to expand. And so there are these things that happen that kind of like give us a little jolt, so that we have to pause and learn and go a little bit more deep to expand out into a greater fullness of being. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that kind of
Oh
answer?
yeah.
Does that answer?
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier around resilience, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's necessary to take a step back and to have some pain in order for us to be able to see things in a new light and to be able to change and grow. I
Right.
think that's what I'm hearing here now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you. Yes. And resilience. I mean, really, if I was saying this to you earlier, that if I had to boil down what I believe happens at Therapy to Evolve, like, yeah, we're using all of these tools and practices, but it's about developing greater resilience. First of all, remembering that we are resilient human beings, because we are, you know, in the nature of being human. So remembering that resilience, but then growing it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and having this conversation, and all kinds of rich insights and information for us all.
Thank
And
you.
is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, well, so certainly keep an eye out for my website is Therapy to Evolve, so www.therapytoevolve.com. And I'm slowly entering the world of social media, so I now have an Instagram account. Therapy to Evolve has an Instagram account, which I'm working. I'm going to be putting some meditations, specifically mudra meditations, just 30-second little things that you can look at and follow, and so keep an eye out for that.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you all out there listening in. Okay.